Yes. Good day, good evening in Nairobi. We're really happy to be here. It's 6:30 on the dot and would like to begin. Thank you very much for making time at this hour to be present. We have a very exciting session. We're going to begin with a very quick introduction to this day and then hand it over to Jürgen to take over the panel and to listen to your insights, and then I'll end the session. So welcome to everyone online. I hope you can hear us. Just chat, right on the chat. I'll follow up if there's anything we need to follow up on. And Melanie, here's to you. Let's begin. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. My name is Melanie Conner. I'm from the International Rice Research Institute, and I would like to welcome you to our session today. Because it's so late, I thought it might be nice if you all try a little bit of biofortified food and we bring around everything. You didn't get any. Oh, can you please pass this around so that it comes to the panel, that they at least can try something they are going to talk about. So we are part of the Better Diets and Nutrition Science Program. We are the area of work for under biofortification, and we work, and you should see it here behind me, but it's not so well seen. We work on 13 crops across the whole of the CGIAR with 9 of our centers, and we have 3 underutilized crops. So that's cowpea, bambara, groundnut, and taro. And yes, I do not want to take too much space. I have a couple of roots here as well for you to see. And you see what biofortification can look like. And somebody outside said to me before, it looks like the rainbow. And I hope biofortification will be the rainbow. Oh, was you, exactly. So with that, I would like to hand over to Jürgen. And yeah, please go ahead. Thank you for coming.
This is Jürgen Hackmann. I'm not working in CG, but with CG from outside. I was asked to facilitate these 1.5 hours or 2 hours to make it a bit interactive, which, as you can see, it's not the most conducive environment we have, but still we can do something. We'll make it work. And my job now is, first of all, we have a panel. We're still missing the chief scientist, Sandra. She will come hopefully very soon. And I would like to hear a bit from the panel what they think, what they are doing actually in biofortification, how they see where it's going, and also a bit what's the comparative advantage of CGIAR is compared to other partners. Now, I would like to start with more from a bit more the demands. Now we have on the panel David Karanja. He is representing the DG from Calro, so Kenya. We have with Arun, who is Harvest Plus. There's Yvonne, DG Erie. We have Finn Beat, he's from IFAD. Will introduce himself. We have Simeon from IATA, the DG, and we will have Sandra, Chief Scientist, on it. Okay. So let's start from, I would say, actually from investment side. IFAD, you are supporting biofortification. Can you tell us what you're doing, what the demand is, how you see it, and how you see it, where it's going?
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm Ben Bean, and I'm the lead global technical expert for agronomy within IFAD. I think you all know that IFAD is the only financial institute that focuses on food security and farming systems. Lots of different types of ways to resource money, but it's blended finance. So it's including loans demanded by the government, but also blended with Global Climate Fund, GEF, Adaptation Fund, public banks. And there's lots and lots of information about finance, which I'm not going to touch on. But in terms of what do we want to do, it is to have improved crop varieties, which are biofortified. We don't just want food security anymore. We definitely want nutritional security. But we also want to make sure that these options are made available to farmers. So my plea at the very beginning, because I know you want short inputs from lots of people, is to make sure that there is a seed sector which is driven by the private sector to multiply and distribute quality seeds as options, not as prescriptions, but as options for local contexts. I'll stop there because I know that you want to get a series of inputs, unless you want me to keep talking.
No, 3 to 4 minutes. We don't want you to bombard with. We have been listening to so many panels that sometimes when I listen to these panels, I felt I want to say something as well. So let's interact with each other rather than just listening to them. So thank you very much. David.
Good evening, everyone. Apologies from the Director General. There were overlapping events, but also I think I coordinate grain legumes in Caro. And I think also very soon from what I got, I could be the incoming director, Caro Seeds. So I think he decided maybe I should start with this session. So what is happening on the demand side that in the country, like this morning I had visited one of the biggest millers that pack a lot of grains, and we are talking on beans. So I echo what the partner told me. You scientists claim things are biofortified, they are iron rich, they are vitamin this and this. So what do you want me to tell the consumer? How does the consumer verify? So I think that is one of the discussion we could go along. And then what he said about the seed. On the Caro side, if I take one example, the beans, about 5 years ago, there were only 3 private seed companies in Kenya, 2 plus 1 public, that were dealing with bean seed certified. Right now, there are 8 active, and another 5 have asked for license to do the high iron and zinc beans. So that's part of what we have been doing.
Yeah. How do you see the future?
The future is bright for these crops. But one of the other major things we had an issue is the policy. The policy makers, do they understand what is this, what is going, but also what he has said to the farmer. That particular variety we are taking to the farmer. Does it beat the other varieties we are talking about in terms of production? But the consumers will embrace the issues of biofortification very well. But I may need to add a rider, and this is because of Caro Seeds. As long as you are not discussing Kenya GMO, you are okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, David. Welcome as incoming director. Yeah, okay. Let's hear from the DGs, from the director generals of different centers who are strongly involved. What do you think? What are you doing? Where you see it going? Comparative advantage of CG is often an issue. Can you elaborate a bit? Let's start with Yvonne, then with Simon.
Thank you, Jürgen. Thank you also for inviting me now. I'm the DG of Erie, so rice is the thing that I'll be talking about. And I want to build off the comments that were made by my colleague here. We have a tremendously important job to do. We are living in a world where we've got malnutrition, undernutrition, and overnutrition, and hidden nutrition. And we are constantly focusing on sort of processing to enable foods to be available to people that are convenient. The reality is that if you ask countries, and I'll give you an example, India as an example, India doesn't just want to raise productivity or build resilience or drive opportunities to offset climate change or to mitigate from crops like rice. They want nutritious options for their population. Now, in many of these populations, if you want to take countries like India, China, Philippines, we have non-communicable diseases that are rising exponentially in the population. And with the rapid urbanization of young people to cities, they are starting to use their purchasing power generally to buy sweet, sticky, salty, and fatty foods. that are driving these non-communicable diseases down in terms of the age. What we don't do in the agriculture sector is talk about the costs related to health of these diseases. And I'll give you an example. If we take something like iron deficiency, anemia, 1.6 billion people worldwide. Zinc deficiency impacts 17% of the global population. If we talk a little bit about the opportunities for high iron and zinc, they aim to provide the estimated average requirement of up to 30% in iron and 40% in zinc. If we talk about diabetes, we are in the Pacific in double digits, high-end double-digit figures. And in China and India and in the Philippines, that's also the case. So the opportunity for CGIAR and IRI's role in that opportunity is one of many roles, is to actually produce more nutritious varieties that are choices for consumers. Now remember, our investment is generally in farmers because farmers produce affordable, high quality food across the board to global consumers, whether they're dealing with local markets or export markets. So IRI is really keen to be able to use nutritious varieties that are also climate resilient and stress tolerant and may mitigate the emissions of methane. But they are keen to demonstrate the efficacy of nutritious food in driving down some of those diseases. Now, what I just want to say is CGIAR do not have a track record in changing behaviors at scale. And even health ministries struggle to do that. But we do have the role of providing choices that are better for global populations. Stop there. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you a lot, Yvonne. Simeon.
Thank you, Jorgen, and good evening, friends and colleagues. For me, it's a really pleasure to be here because of the importance of this topic. At IITA, as I said this morning, we don't just breed crops for the sake of improving yield. We breed for, yes, improving yield. We breed for resilience, like against the drought or flood, but we also breed for nutrition. That's what we're working. So for us, it's an important agenda, at IITA. And what we are working on, a number for micronutrients, we look up a number of micronutrients like vitamin A, iron, and the zinc. Let me give you some example of what IITA is doing. So we have developed vitamin A rich cassava varieties in collaboration with Harvest Plus, and I want to recognize the presence of Arun here. In Nigeria, the National Root Crop Research Institute, and also with other CGIAR centers. And we also are breeding for maize with vitamin A, and IITA has developed vitamin A enriched maize, which also aims to combat vitamin A deficiency, particularly among children and pregnant women. Other commodities, because IITA works on 6 major commodities, we also breed for banana and plantain. For banana, we also focus on iron and vitamin A as well. And particularly with, in the case of Naro in Uganda, and again there with the Harvest Plus, we just released a variety not long ago that's really going to be useful for East Africa. So we are doing that. I think the agenda is huge for us in terms of the research that we're doing, and we're not stopping there. We want to really expand in this area. The biggest constraint, Jorgen, that we are facing is how to reach, the people in the rural space who cannot afford supplements like some of the people like me can take, but you want them to be able to consume the food already enriched with micronutrients, and then they become healthy. This is a major challenge that we are facing. That's why working with the development agencies, African Development Bank and World Bank, and other donors, Gates Foundation and others, we can try to influence the delivery and uptake of those technologies. It's a huge agenda for us. And I want to mention that it is something that IITA alone cannot do. This young lady here is, the lead scientist on that. But what can she do alone? It's impossible, right? She has to work with IFPRI, work with, Harvard Plus. She has to work with IRI. She has to work with, what other stuff you're working with? Africa, right? So all this to be able to really, achieve results. So my point is really to emphasize partnership. I mentioned, for me, it's key partnership. Let's do that. Let's do that. We partner and we work together. But let's not forget the national programs. I just signed, colleagues, a partnership agreement, you were there, with the African Agricultural Research Institution and University of Educations for the CGIAR to engage with them to be able to advance the research and also nutrition agenda. And they are all enthused about that. Let's commit them, let's work together. So this is what I want to say for now. And the agenda is an important one. Actually, let me continue to say that 2024, when I joined IITA about 30 months ago, one of my tasks was to update the strategy of the institution, which we completed last year. And nutrition is one of the pillars strategy. For us, it's critically important. So we remain ready. We want to collaborate. We want to work together. We want to achieve results. We want to reach out to people to be able to talk. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Simeon. Clear statement. Thank you. Before we come to CGIAR position, I'd like to hear from more private sector. Harvest Plus Solution is private sector. They're in scaling. What are some of the things you are doing? What are some of the prospects you see? Where are we? And afterwards, I can present.
Okay, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, Harvest Plus came up with the concept of biofortification. Can crops be bred with high micronutrients? And then, once they are bred, people consume, will they eat it? And will their nutrition status get better? And then will farmers adopt it? So that started 20 years ago. And we partnered very closely with our CG centers like IITA, CIMMYT, IRI, SIP, and ICFISAT, for example. And it took us about a decade to develop the crops. I come from the seed industry. I worked for DuPont Pioneer for 25 years. And I was running the business and making tons of money for the company, but I didn't understand. I understood yield very well, but I did not understand nutrition. And when I came this side, it was like, wow, we private sector bred out nutrition and we got to put it back in. So we work very diligently at Harvest Plus to make sure that, the concept is proven. So it is proven now. Long story short, we are reaching about enough grain is being produced in the global south to reach about 330 million people. So I would say this is the single largest opportunity for CGIAR to show impact. I really believe that. And our best story is in Pakistan, for example. We partnered with CIMMYT to produce high zinc wheat, introduced that with NARS in 2019. Last harvest, 50% of the total grain production in Pakistan was high zinc wheat. We catalyzed the private sector. The value of that high zinc wheat at $350 a ton, maize price there, is $5 billion. $5 billion every year. And this is what we want to do, is catalyze the private sector. Our internal goal is to reach 1 billion people. We are 1/3 there. The problem we're solving is 2 billion people are still malnourished, 3 billion people can't afford a healthy diet. So partnering Simeon, spot on, Yvonne and other, CIMMYT, IITA, ICRISAT, I think this is the future. Food needs to be nutritious. And, we, private sector, and probably Sandra is part of that, she may relate to that. We bred out nutrition. We got to put it back in. And not only that, we got to get it to the farmer's hands. So putting it back in and putting it on the shelf is not the answer. So I think this is where we come. I think this is the competitive advantage of CG for the next decade. We need to double down on this. And I'm coming to, from a meeting with Agra. We have school meals program. And the beans, when we started the beans, they were twice the price of common beans. Today, because of the increase in production in your health and supply, the price is like budget neutral. So in this time of food crisis, inflation, we have dropped the price by almost 50%. We went from 200 shillings to 100 now. So these are the kinds of transformation opportunities in front of us, and we need to seize them. Otherwise, we all become irrelevant. I come from the private sector. There's no perfect answer. Biofortification is not the silver bullet. But when people have no choice, right? What do we offer? So we offer nutrition in the food systems, and we need to double down on some bets. So that's my sort of, excitement and, the possibilities of partnering with, centers and making things happen.
We can feel your passion.
Well, there are more passionate people than me and Harvest Plus that are sitting there. So I suck up on their energy. I have no energy by myself.
Fantastic. Maybe 1 or 2 words, Harvest Plus. Is it CG outside? or
Yeah,
back?
yeah. Let me.
Probably
That's
a lot of
a
people are asking
that's
this
a good question. So we have we started as Harvest Plus. We reached 330 million people, and now we're in a phase of accelerating the impact. So how do you do that? Engage with private sector and crowd them in, crowd their investments, bring sustainability, and we can't do that from within the CG. There are various things, various models you have to deploy to sort of position these crops and get them scaled up. So we have formed another organization that sits outside the CG, called Harvest Plus Solutions. I lead that organization. Ravinder is the Chief Operating Officer. And the goal is of that organization to really engage private sector and crowd them in and get to the last mile, solve their problem. And we are really excited about what CG has, innovations. And we are looking forward to partnering with CG on broader set of innovation and taking them to the last mile to create impact. So Harvest Plus, our research element stays in CG with IFPRI, right? So policy reforms, nutrition science, economic research, that place fits very well. The scaling piece, we work with the private sector. We work with private sector. They say, we don't understand what CG talks about. So they say, well, you guys are good translators, right? So we bridge that gap. So some here, some there.
But normally spin-offs have a major drive also to change their parents. So let's see what Sandra has to say about that. But the same breed. She also worked for the same company for a long time. We bred it out. Now we
Yeah,
bring it
good to
back
see
in.
you.
Welcome to the club.
It's a very provoking one. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. But, I think one thing that we always talk about in the private sector is that the easiest way to deliver a solution for the farmer is to pack in the seed, the technology. And here it's not only seed, this is roots and tubers, seeds, rice, cassava, banana. I see the potato. I was a part of the advisory board for Sweet Gains, so I know the work of the sweet potato. Luis here. She was a very big advocate for many years, and there were so many changes that happened out of that. So CG, comparative advantage, CG, absolutely enormous. But I think it's a lot harder for us to influence, although we didn't need to create incentives, policies create incentives of, better nutrition. No doubt, we absolutely need that. I'm not saying not. But for us, the entry point to the interventions, the easiest way for us to influence the food systems is through packaging this into tubers and that's probably the easiest way. Nutrition into tubers, roots, and seeds. That's the easiest way. So I think the rest has been said very well. I'm not going to repeat anything. I think it's just I'm a champion for that.
Great. Thanks a lot, Sandra. Now, one question to all of you. We have done a lot, all great, etc. How do you see in the next 20 years? Biofortification, what's its role, its standing, its positioning in the world of CGIAR, of research, but as well as in the world, the demand side? What are your visions? Let's start with Simeon.
Thank you very much. No, thank you again. I mean, I think one of the challenges that we face, in my view, is the reach of the people. I said it earlier, of the people in the rural area. This is an area that we want to really focus on, but we need to continue, building on our research capacity. I think this is critically important. Now, we have new tools at our disposition. The AI assisted breeding, the genomic, selection, the remote sensing. These are things that I think we can be able to use to be able to influence the research in nutrition. We also need to look at the multi-nutrient type of breeding for multi-nutrients. Okay, the vitamin A, the iron, the zinc in one crop. Okay, it's complicated, right? But you can. Yeah, now you can see what AI is doing, and this is possible, Yes. Okay, and also research to improve bioavailability in the body, so that when you consume, your body can absorb it more efficiently. Okay, and of course, doing all this by combining with a climate resilient type of research, so that together we can have a package. And also, of course, as you know, the consumption preferences are quite important. So are we breeding for commodities that can be locally and culturally acceptable? Okay, and nutrition is quite important. And finally, I think a big issue is in the area of policies. How can the policy makers integrate this one into their policy making? And let me explain why. Okay, in my career, I was on both sides, so I've seen, how decisions are made. So in countries, they will leave the nutrition agenda, Ministry of Health or Ministry of Nutrition. That's it. Agriculture is not involved. They don't even care. Environment is not involved. Okay, and even Ministry of Urban Affairs, which is also not involved. Yet it is a cross-cutting issues. So how can this kind of agenda be elevated at the level at which it can be transversal? Okay, it can be cross-cutting. Okay, so that it doesn't become a sectoral issue, but it becomes a multi-sectoral issue. And to be able to have it as a multi-sectoral issue, it means that this agenda needs to be held at the highest level of political body. I mean, for countries where you have prime ministers, it should be there. For countries where you are vice president, it should be there. Because, if it's, held by the Ministry of Health, nobody cares. Even you call for multi-sectoral type of meetings, they will send the lowest, delegate to the meeting, and nothing happens. So how do we build that into that? Finally, it's also the people who give money, the Ministry of Finance or planning, because they are the one calling the shots in the country. They are the one allocating budgets. Okay, but if they are not part of the conversation and they are always interested in how to increase fiscal resources and they don't care, they would even try to cut resources going toward nutrition in order to satisfy some other thing. So how do you bring them on board? It's a difficult agenda. And so that means that we need to be, so we remain sectoral, but we need to be able to have a dialogue with the policymaker at that level so that it can become part of the political policy agenda. So it's a complex issue, but it's possible. Thank you.
Right. Same question to Yvonne. What do you see next
Thank
20
you.
years? What are the horizons, big visions?
I really appreciate Simeon's answer. I'm going to give you a similar but different response. So the potential for nutritious food without additions, as in, processed combinations, is huge. Over the next 20 years, we know that the world is moving towards understanding human health in the form of prevention rather than the treatment of disease, more holistic ways. And the role of nutrition in that is huge. And there's an evolving field which takes account of advances such as AI and genomics and phenomics and transcriptomics to understand the relationship between the quality and the nutrition of our food and the way in which the body functions, including things like exercise and sleep and so on. That's a massive, massive industry in the first world. And that is already beginning, and it's only going to increase in its momentum. The other thing I would say is that biofortification of staple crops, rice, wheat, even beans, will aid and address malnutrition and micronutrient deficiencies in low-income regions. They don't have the same choices, and so there are very clear and obvious ways in which to address that. The other thing I would say is that we think about biofortification in a bubble. It's not simply that we are going to be increasing the levels of iron or zinc or protein or even reducing the GI content, but it includes the way in which we prepare and eat rice. So the nutrient compositions of the rices that we are growing, and there's an increasing demand for, certainly if I speak about red, and I'm sure that Prem can speak about, there are red and purple and black and, speckled rices, and the preparation techniques are ranging in all sorts of ways. And using AI in the gene banks, we can not only identify the genes responsible for these nutrient compositions, but we can also identify the genes responsible for these nutrient additions as part of the pericarp and beyond, and the opportunities for cooking characteristics that retain the nutrition in the crop. So these are all advances, but what we don't do is compare the cost of these in comparison to fortification, supplementation, and incentives for behavioral change. These are extremely expensive, difficult to sustain programs. And so we should be looking at the healthcare costs that are preventable. We should be looking at the alternatives to more nutritious food in order to make the case for healthier opportunities. I'll say one last thing. We've seen consumption changes in different populations around the world. People are trying to produce alternative proteins. They're interested in single cell or fungal-based proteins. They're interested in fermented products. All of these are being driven by the sustainability of our food system. So we have an obligation to ensure that we can put it in the seed and not drive opportunities for higher carbon, more processing, global food chains in order to be able to support our populations into the future and try and minimize the healthcare costs that are coming.
Great. Thanks a lot. big vision. David, how do you see it from a Calro and Kenyan perspective? What's the future?
Outlook, my colleagues have spoken very well on the research side, but then there is the key question. Are these particular technologies that are coming out reaching that farmer, reaching that person at the lower end of the spectrum? That's normally the main question. Then is there a buy-in from the people in the value chain, the private sector, the county governments, what to do? If I take a simple thing like the beans, and I normally say the bean story, Harvest Plus, when they came there, what is that one thing that we can do to kickstart their iron beans? And I told them what we need is breeder seed and then move the rest. So they gave us data capital and the rest now is history. So, but what are we still grappling? We are estimating that we have only reached 1.5% of the seed industry in Kenya. That means over 98% of the farmers are still using other seed varieties. So that's about $18 million. But in 5 years from now, if we can increase the high iron and zinc bean seed to 5% of what is being used, would move that in monetary terms to about $60 million on seed only. But then you go backwards to claim to what employment does that create? How does it help the women? How does it help the youth? You start creating a whole industry in that. So we come back to the other commodities, sweet potato, cassava, all those that are fortified. What do we need to do to move them from the shelves and into the farmers and for the people outside there to see that this particular commodities is making business for them? Like what I was talking this morning, the industry, they watch and they look. When I talk to them, they say, we don't want all the science and what. Yes, we have seen our competitors are eating to the market, so we want to buy into the market. So that's what they were talking about, that with the two now remaining big industry players in the grain, if they come on board, then I'm seeing us increasing that percentage at much higher. And by that time, we have not even tackled the export market. Thank you.
Hello, George. You are from the scaling side, young uptake side. What's your big vision next 20 years? What will happen? What can you do?
I think, I mean, the panel has spoken. I have, all we can contribute from a Harvest Plus solution side is what David said, take it to the last mile, take it to the people. The addressable market, if I say my private sector language is 3 billion people can't afford a healthy diet. That's like 40% of us, in today's day and age. So we are dedicated to taking these technologies, David, like we worked to the market, to the people, and the spin-offs are huge, like you said, in employment, etc. So yeah, I mean, we gotta invest. That's my request in technology. Make sure we have competitive products because private sector and farmers are also private sector. They would adopt if there's any deficiency in yield and other things. So we got to make sure that we have adequate investments in biofortification for product development. And then, you need an organization like what we are trying to do to catalyze scale. Because in private sector, there are two things, and we work with small and medium companies. Two things they will never do. They cannot. One is research investments. Big dollars are needed. Billions are needed. I worked at Pioneer. Sandra was there. Over $1 billion in R&D. The other thing they cannot do is marketing and awareness creation. So, we are trying to play our part in the marketing, awareness creation, and getting it to the last mile. And then CG has to sort of, make sure that they invest in the right products for the right acre, as we used to say. It works for the farmers, so nutrition, yield. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Great. 3 billion people. That's a word. Yep. They need investment. Are you clear where to invest now?
Well, maybe I'm just going to start off with probably repeat some of the things that are said, and it's 4 things in terms of partnership. One is I do think research is needed, and I think the CG is unique in improving varieties. Biofortification is the focus now, but we obviously need drought and salt, flooding tolerance. We need a dynamic system whereby if there's a new pest, new disease, then the whole system is rejuvenated. There's never going to be a prescription. Even if there's a scaling strategy, you need to replace the starting material. I remember when maize-leaf necrotic disease came in, you do one diagnostic test, oh, it's that virus. You do another diagnostic test. It was a combination of 2 viruses. So that we need to be quite responsive and agile in how we monitor the success of what's being deployed. But I do think it's a very wise strategy to target the staple that most people are cultivating as the basis of the system. And I particularly like the idea that farmers are the private sector. I'm continuously faced by this, but it's not just the farmers that are driven by money, and that's their motivation. It's also the input suppliers. It may be the seed multipliers. It may also be the people who are uptaking and transforming it into nutritious foods without the addition of salt, sugars, fats. But something I've worked a lot with millets, you really need to make a product that is attractive. And along the value chain, it really needs to be considered to be not romantic, but a business for every single individual involved along the whole of the value chain. I also think we need to be careful because we all get excited. I used to work at the CG about one particular crop. I've worked on bananas, I've worked on all sorts. I worked in boiled veg for fruits and vegetables. But we also need a systems approach whereby diversification is the key, because the most vulnerable component for any farmer is the soil. So you can have your super crop, which will be the staple and everyone's familiar with, but there needs to be a little bit of an increase in scope of options for growing something after the crop so that the soil is protected from erosion, is enriched, its structure is improved, its biovitality is improved, and this is for the long-term income generation. So for the 20-year plan, we need not just to introduce what is considered to be a good component, but accept it's a component and then build around that and have many more crops which are suited to the less favorable conditions. And they may be after rice with residual water for vegetables. It could be after maize, and it could be pigeon pea, or it could be sesame, but always keep the ground covered, but have a market for whatever is being cultivated. And then probably one thing, Simeon has left us now, but I was with him for the CADEP, XP, post-Malabo and the Kampala Declaration. IFAD is supporting technical arm of the African Union. Also the sub-regional research organizations, CORAF, Azareka, CARDESA, and also the National Agricultural Research Programs. There needs to be a lasting legacy as well. And I'll be honest, with some of the IFAD projects, we do not build in enough national research scientists who are MSc, PhD, then linked to networks to then empower themselves and leave a lasting legacy, but to respond to new situations. And one of the benefits of linking with these types of organizations as well is for us, it's the country that demands the loan. We can't influence them on which partners they want to work with. But if they're already aware of who can provide value, it makes our job much easier, because I sincerely believe that research is a dynamic situation that we work in. It's not just climate, it's pests, it's diseases, but it's also market changes. So this responsiveness is really important. But the countries need to be made aware of the benefit, which then makes the scaling that we can do to tens of thousands of beneficiaries within each country much better, because it needs to be evidence-based.
Thanks a lot. Now, Sandra, do you have a
My dream.
CGIAR vision or?
My dream.
big-
This is my dream, okay?
Good dream. Okay, let's hear it.
20 years from now, we design our food baskets, okay? Country specific, community specific, whatever level of granularity we need. We understand which foods are part of the culture that are important. We biofortify them. We understand what is lacking in that food basket. We have interventions to complement that. And we actually designed that. We designed it with the data. We designed, instead of just you know, and then we look at also how we actually accomplish that by really with minimal and with climate positive if possible, but minimal with the best sustainable farming systems, if you will. So for me, my dream 20 years is that we can design it. Because right now we are doing interventions and we're like with the assumptions of these major crops, which are the crops that are staple foods of these different countries. But we need to move beyond that. We need to say, okay, what that basket looks like in 20 years and how we actually go with design and provide the technology that can make that happen. That's my dream. Good.
Great. I think there's a pretty strong support that there's a big future. But the question is, what needs to be done? What are the real big things? And for that, we will go into groups. But before that, who of you are in CG? Let's have a look. Okay, quite a lot. Who are NARS, partners, etc.? Yeah, we have a few. Who is private sector? A little bit. Yeah, well, if I'm not. Okay. Private sector, hands up. Okay, yeah, you can count you. Okay. Yeah, okay. Which private sector are you? Or consumer engagement. Okay. So good. We need our friends who were previously private sector, who are still half, and to come in strongly because we also need this perspective. So please join the group so that definitely we have. We will see. Okay. It's not a fantastic room to do that, but if we all want to make it work, it will work. So, no, it's okay. Turn around your chairs. Let's form a group of 6 to 8 or something. And there at the corner as well, at that corner, and maybe here, so that we have 4 or 5 groups. Yeah. You join as a private sector and also in other groups, so that we get a bit of a good representation. And the question is, second. So what's the way forward? We were just discussing big visions, but what's the way forward with fortification and health enhancing crops? What needs to happen to make it quantumly future? Not a gradual thing, but we really say this. I mean, he talks about 3 billion people. Hallelujah. That's a word. Yeah. So what needs to happen to this for this to really take place? Yeah. Let's discuss a bit. We have different perspectives. We have CG, we have NARS partners, we have other partners. What really needs to happen? Come up with some big ideas, not the small. We don't want the small incremental. Is there anything which can trigger a real big thing? Next 5, 10, 15 years. What's a big idea which can catapult and have a quantum leap the way biofortification will be? Okay? We've got 30 minutes. I'll give you some of these cards so that you can put some points on the cards. Each group will report back and we'll see what your big ideas are. Okay? So please turn around the chairs and figure out how to do it. I know it's not an ideal room, but just figure it out. Yes. I think that corner is fine. Here in the corner will be fine. These ones will be struggle a bit more. One corner over here. This is the challenge. Yeah, this actually the challenge is almost as big as biofortification. Give them one, two, okay. Yep. Yeah. So run one of these. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wherever you find space. Okay. Yeah, the room is Very flexible. So please write your big ideas on the cards. I will ask you and then we put them up here so that you see a little bit what the people think. Ladies and gentlemen, you have about 5 minutes more. Wrap up slowly. Come up with your big ideas, put them on cards. Okay? The others,
Hello.
try to come in front and find your way somehow.
It's
Well,
getting
this-
really warm in this room.
Yes, you want.
Need to get into the fresh air. Okay, so I have to say that a good proportion of the private sector somehow found themselves in this group. So you will have to appreciate why we went for the choices we went. Okay, so the big idea from Group A is to connect agriculture and health sectors. We're calling it our big winning idea. This is in your interest, folks. Our big idea is integrated healthcare. That is connecting agriculture and health sectors. That's our big idea. And how are we going to do that? We talked a little bit about how we can use data, particularly working with health related organizations, to show how nutritious food addresses big health challenges. You heard us talking about diabetes and iron induced anemia and things like that. That's kind of what I mean. But not only that, we want to see that we design food baskets that are made up of the things that Sandra said. We want them to be a combination of traditional foods that are adapted to those environments that people love and want to retain. And we might include insects, fungi, we might include fish heads. What does that say? Fish heads. Fish, plants, livestock, all of it. So these food baskets, remember, are going to be contextual. And so we need to drive value chains that are biodiverse. We know that that has other impacts on the farming system, on opportunities for mixed farming for farmers to be able to create viable options. But it's not just farmers we're producing stuff for. We should be looking at the ingredients industry and those who are working to combine food products. And we should be looking for functional foods. And I'm going to give you two examples. So if we take, as an example, Erie's biofortified rice, which is very high protein, we could introduce that into weaning products for babies. For example, we could hopefully we could move towards the 1,000 days of high protein in children's food. But we can also produce ingredients that go into other food chains, such as processors who might want to produce diets for, hospitals so that the recovery rates from surgery are higher, the complications are lower. And we know that there are hospitals interested in this. So ICRISAT has got relationships with Pearl Millet related to that. But we know that to be able to do that at a reasonable level, we have to focus. And so we need to have a clear idea of what markets can enable us to solve particular challenges, particular options for health and agriculture in an integrated way. And we need to be able to cost up those, both in terms of our comparative advantage, who we need to work with, how much it's going to cost, and what the return on that investment is going to be from a health perspective. I don't know if I forgot anything to you.
Well,
Is it our group? Yeah, I think our group was mostly focused on the need to. Oh, we weren't given cards. You want us to put on cards? Oh, you were doing this? Oh, then you can speak. Oh, he was making the cards. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, I think, okay, there were a lot of ideas that came out here. Obviously, I think one of the key ones was, yeah, working with a more diverse portfolio of crops, but I also think building into and identifying institutional markets to drive demand, that we need not only to do building consumer awareness, but building greater awareness among policymakers. And I think like an entry point in sub-Saharan Africa, school feeding programs is a major entry point to be building this. There was a long discussion on what's in a word. In some countries, biofortification is not considered a marketing word. It's associated, we still have this GMO image problem. And of course, genetic modification may be a major way to get multiple traits into biofortified crops. So I think as a policy issue, we have to address that, but certainly it came up in West Africa that that's become a barrier in some countries to biofortification promotion, or the word fortified in general, people are afraid of it. So we have an image problem that needs to be dealt with. And then of course, for the invisible traits, there's a need for greater labeling and regulation because that can also, if consumers trust the product, they know they are really getting a biofortified product, that will enable and enhance and drive acceleration. Yeah, and then the discussion came up again. Are we sure that the varieties we are promoting are market competitive? It's very important that they have all the additional traits and are agronomically competitive, and we need to make sure that is happening in our breeding programs. So thank you. I didn't know you. Great. Passes.
Okay, yeah, we were also discussing the issue of perception and how perception influences behavior and behavior change, and that's a big need of understanding why people eat what they eat and why they do not want to engage in certain food groups and things like that. So we have that as well. More from a psychological point of view, because it goes really deep into the psychology of how people make decisions. Then we also were talking about, especially within the CGIAR, the disconnect of evidence creation and evidence use in terms of how the breeding programs use the evidence that's created, where's biofortification needed, where are the big hotspots of malnutrition, what traits are needed for which groups of people and where. So there's a big disconnect, and we need to connect better within the CGIAR with these with the different types of stakeholders. And from that one, we also have that we should use what is already there. Like, for example, we have a lot of underutilized crops that are high in micronutrients. So why don't we take them forwards as a start, and the ones we have been creating over the last, I don't know how many years, and use them to go forward and roll them out, see what can be done, and not starting from scratch again, because there's no need to start from scratch again, because you have worked a lot on that stuff already. There are things. So let's use what is there and build, like, for example, a multi-stakeholder nutrition platform where we have stakeholders from all sorts of different areas: nutritionists, breeders, social scientists, the NARIS partners, the medical professionals, and all of those people, and come with different types of solutions, because not one solution will not fit all. And it needs to be culturally sensitive and specific and accessible for the people who will need to use that. What do we have? Oh, we also discussed about bringing biofortification into school feeding programs, and discussed about bioaccessibility, looking at trade-offs between different types of traits, whether there are trade-offs when you enhance with one and other, because we heard before, it would be great to have everything in one, but that might not be possible because there will be a trade-off between different traits and bioaccessibility. And we heavily discussed the funding issue, because funding at the moment is really fragmented. Projects start, then they stop, then another project starts, it goes 5 steps back to where the other one has finished, and there's no continuity. If we want to reach something, there needs to be some sustained funding for the organization, so you can build up young researchers, young professionals to promote the biofortification, to help pulling it through, and not just like one group here and one group there and one group on another side. So we discussed many more things, but we only got the things just then.
So the first one aligns with the food basket, doing prioritization of crops for biofortification based on the food baskets for each region and the breeding potential for those crops. The next trend is about mainstreaming biofortification into crops that are already liked by farmers, so that we're not creating alternative products. The third one was about prioritizing bioavailability research, either at the breeding level or at the processing level. The next one was leveraging genetic biofortification and when to leverage agronomic biofortification. We seem to only focus on genetic biofortification when we can have quick wins with agronomic biofortification. So to figure out when to use what and when to combine both. We feel that awareness creation, branding, and engaging the private sector might be the missing link. And lastly, mainstreaming biofortification into cropping systems at the farmer's level, so that the farmer is growing biofortified beans, biofortified rice, biofortified wheat, so that it becomes part of what they do. So thank you.
Yes. So we had a very good conversation and sorry. To the other group. We identified the agronomic biofortification as a key area of investment in addition to conventional breeding, which we are already doing. And we also had discussions around bioavailability of the micronutrients that are already integrated into the staple crops. And this can also be combined closely with the agronomic fortification. And we went on to say that as we look at the bioavailability, we may want to look at it in terms of actually how the diets are consumed, not just the bioavailability at a single crop. We know that households will combine stuff into one meal. So we may want to look at some of those staples or the combination of the foods. And then we also talked about a close linkage between research and marketing. How do we message? Like one of our colleagues was, I think it's Max, was telling us when you attempted to market a glycemic index, oh, that's for the diabetics. It's not for me. So the messaging. So research can help us to really tweak our messaging and reach the consumers with the messages that we want to pass across. And then we also identified the involvement of value chain actors in understanding their role in biofortification. Because it's possible we have our zinc, and actually that's part of the reason why zinc maize is struggling, because the processing, the milling process takes away all the zinc. And so in the event that the value chain actors understand their role in these biofortified crops, then that may also help us to actually reach the benefits we want at the point of consumption. We had a couple of things around behavior change, communication. One of them I've just said, we think this still needs a lot of work. Identification, we identified marketing level in terms of awareness creation, in terms of the messaging, and I think it also came up in our previous discussions. How do we reach that vulnerable household? What language should we use? How should we communicate? So those are also things that we discussed. Behavior change came up a couple of times, and for this particular one, suggest focusing on food preparation practices to reduce micronutrient inhibition as well as the interaction. That's not the one I explained. And then also behavior change. And this one is where we are saying it is a multi-sector approach. And putting the governments at the middle of it so they can push the policy-making process. And finally, we think that this being a very important intervention, possibly we need to be more intentional in terms of funding. And even at CGIAR level, can we just say 2%, 3%, or something going to biofortification? Thank you.
I must admit that I think all the ideas have been really good. and I think it's been very productive, particularly at the end of the day. But I think it shows the passion that there is to make sure that we move away from food security towards nutritional security. And the only way this pathway can be delivered is by individuals and companies making money along the way. But it has to be done in a way that protects the environment. You can make short-term gains. You were talking about yield being the way that breeders were focusing in the past. But we need to make sure that the varieties are also able to survive under those local conditions, which may be more marginal lands. But I do think that the diversification and then the integration provides more money for the farmers and for businesses along the value chain. And this is what's going to make it sustain. But I do feel that research needs to be at every stage. And I don't think we can ever say this is the biofortified staple. Everything else needs to be around it, needs to be continuously dynamic and responsive. But I particularly like the idea of ingredients. If people are eating pot noodles, if people are eating things that we don't think they should be eating, we'll just make them better. I've worked with adding bambara groundnut, moringa and cowpea leaves into pot noodles and into other sort of snacks. I've worked with in India with millets being incorporated, because millets are seen as an old-fashioned crop. But if you blend it into sort of particularly demanded by young people, foodstuffs, then this is an opportunity and an uptake. So I would say that collectively, all the ideas are great. And I think that the inclusion of the private sector is something that is potentially a bit newer than would normally be considered. But farmers are the private sector. Every decision they make is based on what money they make. And they will not make money from growing a biofortified crop. And we don't want them to make money because that means consumers can't afford it. So we need to merge with an expectation and hopefully policy support that increased nutrition is in the benefit of all of the sectors, whether it be workforce efficiency, whether it be healthcare, whether it be environmental protection. So it needs to be integrated. And then for IFAD, if the governments know this, then they will ask for it. So when we give them the money, they will demand it. So
Great. Thanks a lot.
Mine will be a simple one. The new idea I had was increasing the price elasticity of the biofortified crops. But also we need balance between the people who want to reach more are the ones at the bottom of scale. So we need the farmers to make profit, and we need these guys to buy these products. So we need to balance the two so that we get there. Thank you.
This food needs to be nutritious, and so this was really great ideas and practical ideas. Few things to sort of reinforce is the research and the marketing teams, which I was telling Matty and Ravinder, need to work very closely together to how to make it successful. Because no product will be perfect, but if you place the product at the right location, it will be perfect. So that I want to emphasize that. And then I think we need a dedicated focus in CG for biofortified crops and baskets, because right now it's kind of scattered. So we need to bring it together. And the third thing I'll say is, to my first point, the marketing and research needs to work together. So with the Breeding for Tomorrow science program, we have put together a initial team that'll come together on the product side. So that constitutes people from the research, all the centers that are involved, and Harvest Plus Solutions, so that we can then really make it happen. So I think those are the, I'm not saying anything new, but I'm just highlighting things that'll make it, work better.
Good.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're gonna, if I could just add to that point, because it's a deep concern of mine as well, Arun, and if you're going to that Breeding for Tomorrow meeting. In 2014, at the second annual Biofortification Conference in Kigali, the then Director General of the CGIAR stood up and made a commitment, which all the DGs had signed to. Unfortunately, Yvonne has left and Simeon has left and Sandra has left. They made a commitment to mainstream biofortified traits into the major breeding lines. And if you look at the document as it stands today, it's a separate side program that is underfunded. And this is where within our own institution, we need donors to come and say, why isn't biofortification at the forefront of your breeding program? And to be honest, it's because private sector breeding strategies took over in the CG and they breed for yield. And of course, there's a lot of other factors that need to be bred for. It is a long list of traits for every crop, but we have to hit the reality. And the reality is when you're breeding for biofortified trait, and particularly for the non-visible traits, you spend $150,000 to $200,000 a year in a breeding program for the nutrient testing. Using the NIRS machines, using the XRF, it costs. We should be sharing those machines. We should have a coordinated system within the CG breeding program to do this efficiently and help each other. Okay? And it should be a mainstream program, not a side program. And so that's why I wish Sandra was still here. Because I wanted to bring up this point earlier before you broke us into groups, Jürgen, because this is the constraint. To be an effective biofortification institute, we have to have a pipeline. And that pipeline has been severely weakened in the last 6 years. We have to get the pipeline on track, and the donors need to speak on our behalves. Because if you don't have the pipeline and you don't get the basic research done, if you don't have the efficacy studies, if you don't have the effectiveness trials, nobody's going to believe in your product. And that has been severely weakened within the CG. And so really, we need you to step up and speak to Sandra and speak to the people who have the power to change the way the research program is currently designed, because it is the product that we can deliver. We do staple food crops. That is our business, and they should be nutritious. And right now we are not heading there. And that is the message I wanted to put on the table, because if we don't correct that, we will have nothing to offer in 10 years that is better than what we have today.
Very quick response, just to sort of clarify things on behalf of IFAD. The countries demand the loans. The countries demand what is done. We facilitate it. The countries have to know what's on offer to then ask for your assistance. And that's why I mentioned CADA and FARA and the regional research and the national agricultural research. We cannot convince a government to follow a particular path. It's their taxpayers who are paying this money back. We are not a donor to the CG. We are a donor to the countries. So if you want to get some of this funding, you need the countries to demand it. I just want to explain the process.
Thank you everyone for coming and spending the evening with us. It's good. It's really humbling to see the dedication and to hear all the insights. Melanie and I, in leading the area of work, really came here to listen and to ask, are we doing it right? What do we need to pay attention to? So we thank you very much for your feedback, your insights. We will take this into our review meetings with the team and better organize how we're doing business. But thank you very much, especially John Lowe. You've been a champion for many years. You've come in at very critical times, and I really appreciate the comment you've made, and we'll make sure that the people who need to hear it do hear it. So thank you everyone, and have a good night. Bye.